If you are under the diamond rank and you want to improve and climb, then these are the 6 best characters to easily climb to diamond. That being said, if you want 7 free wins on the house, you gotta smash the subscribe button and let's jump into it. Now, in order to find the best characters to climb to diamond, you have to think about the characters that can have 1, solo impact, because you need to do a lot by yourself without relying on your team. 2, self-sufficiency, because you're not guaranteed any sort of protection, peel, heal by your team at all. And 3, adaptability. You want characters that can fit in a variety of compositions and playstyles and against very untraditional things. Now, the first character on this list is Bastion. Okay, all right. Well, he's still disabled. Maybe by the time you're watching this, he's not. But all joking aside, it's actually Soldier 76. Now, there's a lot to love about this character. He has mobility, so he can get around the map with ease and get away from danger. He has his own form of heal and sustain in his heal station, meaning that he's less reliant on his team. And then last up, he has burst damage in that Helix, allowing him to incorporate hit and run strategies that are even more effective when there's no peel and less awareness. Now, it's very important on Soldier that you're consistently playing the high ground and looking for optimal situations where you can put pressure into the enemy backline. Soldier thrives at doing a hit-and-run guerrilla warfare strategy up against supports, 1v1ing DPS, and putting pressure into the enemy from an opposite angle of his team. He doesn't want to be standing on the front line, and unless there's mass focus fire or the enemy is low on resources, he almost never wants to focus the tank and would much rather take isolated engagements with squishies on the enemy team. Soldier checks all 3 of our boxes, and it's definitely a character that can climb you straight to diamond. And the next character on the list is perhaps the personification of solo carry, and we have Roadhog. Now, of course, Roadhog can do it all. He can heal himself, he can get picks, he can tank on the front line if needed. There's a ton that this character can do that can just solo carry by himself. Now, it is important to understand that Hog is rather easy to counter against good opponents and joint opponents that are focusing you. If the enemy has like a Zarya or a Diva with an Ana, it's going to be very hard for you to get guaranteed value, but your skill level can definitely overcome many of the obstacles that you're going to face, especially underneath the diamond rank. Hog's one of those characters that gives you a ton of pick potential, and because he can be completely self-sufficient, sometimes he's the best tank when your team is giving you no resources at all, and majority of the fights are just going bad with your DPS getting picked off, and you're not winning a sustained battle with the enemy team. Now, there's 2 things that really matter here, though. Playing around the cooldowns that can completely mess up your hook. It's a good idea to constantly be tracking things like nade and sleep dart and how many bubbles the enemy Zarya has, because then you can force through a hook when needed. And then 2, improving that hook accuracy, which is something that you're really going to want to practice with time. But as a good general tip, you're going to want to fully track the enemy as you're throwing out the hook through the entire animation, and your hooks are going to connect consistently more. Now, the next character that we got to talk about, which is your one-way ticket straight to diamond from the support role, we have Mora. Now, the important thing you need to understand about Mora is she heavily punishes enemies that haven't developed the mechanical skill to properly counter her damage per second. I would say that Mora is a litmus test, because if you're up against a really cracked individual in Masters or a Grandmaster, let's say you're up against a Genji or a Tracer, you have to respect them because they can burst you so hard. It doesn't matter about your heal or your lifesteal. None of these things actually matter, but the lower in rank you go, the less and less DPS players will actually be able to legitimately duel you. And in fact, most players or most squishies will not be able to duel a Mora very well, especially if she incorporates proper movement. Remember, you can still crouch left and right and sway, making yourself hard to headshot, but you're not missing any of your damage. On top of that, Mora has the flexibility to dip out and sustain her team, or go in and follow up her team's damage on a whim. This type of stuff is invaluable when you're talking about ranked play, and on top of that, many teams don't know how to properly position or play around Mora's ult to the point where you're going to get a ton of value out of it, winning entire team fights. This is one of the best characters to climb straight up to diamond. But the next character that we got to talk about on this list, and many of you are going to be like, oh wow, so original, Mills, it's Sojourn. And I understand, Sojourn is meta, Sojourn is strong, but the thing you need to understand about this character is that her kit is incredible for solo carrying. There are very few characters in the game that have the flexibility to poke on the front line and help their team with pressure on the front line, and then also generate pick value. Think about a character like Widow, who can definitely generate a ton of pick value, potentially, but if the enemy is getting bullied on the front line, she can't really help all that much. And there's other characters like Mei, who can definitely put a lot of pressure on the front line, but if they're trying to get isolated picks or just get, you know, a pick to win a fight or contest a long angle, she can't really do that. Now, Sojourn gets the best of both worlds, focusing the front line, generating her charge, dealing damage to shields, helping with her team pressure, and then in between that, looking for isolated picks that she can get on the enemy. And using the railgun, she's going to have a ton of key opportunities to get pickoffs on supports, pickoffs on DPS, just completely contest even snipers like Widowmaker. And that's just talking about her primary and alternate fire. Even if you're not consistently hitting headshots with that alternate fire, you're going to get a lot of value out of the mini grab well and just following it up with body shots with your beam. Now, you slap that all together with a movement ability that gives you vertical flexibility and the ability to get out of danger, and it's the perfect recipe for a character that can be played in just about any composition, can get value in just about any scenario, and can carry just about any game, which is just ridiculous. I definitely think that this is one of the best characters if you want to climb straight to diamond, and not only that, but propel yourself or set yourself up to go even higher. This is the perfect character to grind and play right now. I would definitely suggest it. And the next character that we have for you on this list, another meta quote-unquote character, but this is a character that is not only great to solo carry with, but also makes you a better player by getting good with her, and it's Zarya. Now, there's several things about Zarya that makes her so good. The solo impact is obvious. This character can just completely dominate a game with high charge. She's adaptable in a ton of different compositions, whether you're bubbling in your Reaper or your Genji, or you're bubbling to peel for your supports, or just enabling yourself to deal more damage. And then, of course, the self-sufficiency is on an axis depending on how greedy you want to be with your bubbles. And it's really going to depend on how much you're doing every single team fight. What are you accomplishing with each bubble? Trying to generate a consistent amount of value with each and every one, whether that means picks, pressure, ultimate charge. You got to evaluate when bubbles would get more value used on your team or yourself, and it's going to depend on the situation. Now, one of the key traps that a lot of Zaryas fall into is they get over eager once they get that high charge, and they push forward too much. They leave natural cover. They're not properly playing around their abilities and their cooldowns, and they get isolated and killed with high energy before they can actually make any meaningful impact. And a lot of you are going to say, hey, if only my support would have pocketed me when I'm in this situation, I would kill everyone. But you can't always expect and rely on that thing. Even if it's true, even if you would have gotten a certain amount of pocket or whatever the case may be, you would have popped off and dominated. It doesn't matter if that never actually comes true. You have to play around the team that you have, not the team that you want. And while teammates can be very unreliable, your ability cooldowns, and when they're up, it's not unreliable. And natural cover, like walls and corners and obstruction on the map, is also not unreliable, except for those goddamn moving platforms. Like, why do things move? Okay, sorry, that's a rant for another day. Now, the last but certainly not least character that you gotta play if you want to quickly climb up the ranks is none other than Baptiste. Now, Baptiste is a support that can pretty much do it all. And just like Mora, he has that litmus test where it requires a ton of disciplined play to play around everything a Baptiste can offer. Not only is he very elusive, capable of jumping between the high and the low ground on a dime, which many characters can't easily chase. If you start on the high, they chase you, drop to the low, jump back to the high. You get to change that plane of elevation a lot, and there's many characters that can't really follow you very efficiently there. On top of that, not only can he just get his own healing, but he has an ability that can burst that even further, and then he can cycle that with his immortality field, which is just a game fight winning ability capable of letting him completely survive ultimates, saving his team, and having crazy potential impact. Now, let's not forget that Baptiste can do a fair amount of damage as well, and in a true 1v1 with all of his abilities, the majority of squishes in the game have a problem up against Baptiste, because his immortality field makes him incredibly hard to trade against favorably. Now, especially when you can enable tanks like Zarya to stay alive consistently and be able to be more lenient with their positioning and more aggressive, that could be a way that you're getting a ton of value. So a Baptiste could play directly with your tank to get more consistent value. But even outside of that, Baptiste is just an all-around great value playmaker and support that brings a ton of consistent value game after game, with much skill expression, especially if you're just outright better than the enemy team. I think he's one of the best characters to climb to diamond. But let me know your reasoning for a character that it's incredibly easy to climb to diamond to, and why in the description down below. Smash that subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and check out the Discord, and I'll see you next time.